Chapter 27. Christine grounded me. She struggled to figure out what to ground me from since I didn't do anything. She told me no TV and no phone calls and no going out with friends for a week. I agreed to it, but I worried about what would happen to Logan without my involvement. He called me on Sunday, but Christine politely told him I wasn't able to talk and would see him in school on Monday. She apologized to me as well, as if she felt guilty, but that was my punishment and I expected her to stick to it. I went straight to class on Monday, concerned with anything that might have happened to Logan over the weekend. He strolled in a few minutes later and his aura brightened when he saw me. "Hi," he said, sliding his backpack onto the table and leaving the chair beside him open. "Hi," I said, some of my anxiety settling down now that I saw him here. I'd been so anxious. But it looked like I was having the positive effect I'd hoped for. "I'm sorry I got you in trouble. I hope you're not grounded for long." "I'm fine. What about you? I worried about you all weekend. What's going on with those guys?" Logan's shoulders stiffened and he glanced around to see if anyone could hear us. "Hush," he murmured. I lowered my voice to match his. "What? I didn't say anything to give you away." "Don't talk about it at all." I didn't like those cryptic instructions, but I silenced myself. I was dying to know what else had happened. Did Alexander contact Logan over the weekend? What about the other guy? What was he supposed to deliver on? By the end of class, Logan had returned to being his jovial self. He looped an arm over my shoulders as we walked down the hall. "Every little thing is going to be okay," he said. He seemed in pretty good spirits and some of my guard went down. Again. We both turned at the sound of Alexander's voice and Logan dropped his arm from around me, his aura darkening. He stepped toward Alexander where he stood near the stairs and I started to follow, but Logan stopped me with a raise of his hand. "I'll see you at lunch," he said, and then he walked away leaving me standing there. My heart sank as I watched him step into the shadows of darkness and temptation. I had not won after all. He was still willing to climb into evil's nest, just without me. Desperation surged in my soul. I needed help. I needed Malik. I tried to cheer myself up as I walked to my next class, but my spirits were low. Helping someone make the right decision was hard. My wings fluttered behind me, the discouragement weighing me down. If only we could show ourselves in angel form to humans, then they would believe, then they would trust. I was half distracted when I sat at my desk in my literature class, but the teacher pulled me from my thoughts. "We have a new student today. Everyone please help Malik feel welcome." I lifted my head, startled to hear that name on earth. How many people? The girls near me were giggling and whispering, glancing over their shoulders at the new student, and I did the same, swiveling in my seat before I could stop myself. I inhaled. There, 2 rows behind me, sat Maliki, dressed in earthen clothing, backpack at his feet, white wings folded behind him as he kept his eyes glued on the teacher. Malik was here. Malik's eyes darted my direction ever so slightly, and the small, secret smile he gave me left my insides melting. I turned back around and pretended to pay attention, but I didn't hear a word the teacher said. My mind buzzed with questions. I ripped out a notebook paper to write him a note, but as I scribbled my thoughts down, I knew it was pointless. I would have to wait till after class. My leg bounced up and down, restless. Why was this class taking so long? I squirmed in my seat, creating a small breeze that sent the piles of papers on the teacher's desk floating up as if caught in a mini tornado. The students cried out in surprise, and Ms. Mayhew checked to make sure the windows were closed. I put my pen down and sat on my hands, stifling my nervous energy. Finally, the bell rang and class let out. I slung my backpack over one shoulder and shot out the door, then leaned against the wall and waited, my wings flapping against the cold bricks in agitation. An eternity later, Malik strolled out of the classroom. Perhaps because he was more accustomed to them, he managed to get his backpack all the way on without tangling the straps in his wings, and I never saw a more handsome student. "Malik," I pushed off the wall and launched myself in front of him. "What are you doing here? You're a student. They can see you." He grinned at me, though there was something cautious about his eyes, a certain hesitation. "What you said made sense, that having someone here, a friend, would influence Logan more than a breeze in his ear. So I talked to Elder Master Barachiel, and he got it approved for me to come down, temporarily, I didn't know it was possible. My mind whirled with the implications. It's always been possible, it's just more unusual and granted on a case-by-case examination. So now you can back off. I had started to move toward the cafeteria and Malik had mirrored me. My footsteps stuttered. Back off? Yes, with your attentions to Logan, just go back to being a student, get to know other humans, develop your empathy and whatever. His tone had taken on an abrasive note and shades of green and pink wound through his aura. I didn't understand his displeasure. But I'm accomplishing something. Logan trusts me. I'm his friend. Together you and I can save him. He doesn't need you to be his friend. Malik stopped walking and turned to face me. You're getting too involved. He's getting too involved. The back of my mind tickled, like I recognized something important in Malik's words, but I refused to acknowledge it. I'll do more harm than good if I quit talking to him. Besides, you won't be able to just become his friend without me. Let me help. Malik pressed his lips together, and I sensed he wanted to argue, but instead, he nodded. Introduce me to him, and then we'll see. I had so many questions, things I wanted to ask, but somehow the conversation had been derailed by Logan. I continued toward the cafeteria, my eyes falling on the lustrous white feathers of Malik's wings. Are you a dot? I reached out, holding my breath, and touched the edge of one of his feathers. I could feel it, not like I felt the pressure of the human touch, the illusion of touch, but I really felt it. I stopped walking and stroked the edges of the feather, feeling the firmness of the individual veins, the way they bent under my finger. Malik inhaled and closed his wings, arching them away from me. I looked up at him, questioning. I can touch you. I longed for the wing to be back between my fingers, to stroke the soft down of the feathers along the arch, to see what else I could touch. My light had to be diminished so I could be here on Earth. It's one of the reasons why angels are only allowed to take human form for a limited time. I can touch you, I cried so loudly that people in the hallway turned to look. But you shouldn't. Malik shoved his hands in the front pockets of his jeans and avoided my attempts to grab his hand. Jez, not here. I couldn't fathom why not. I had been longing to touch him for over a year, and now he was telling me I could, but I shouldn't? Malik saw my expression and sighed. I'll explain later, not now. I would have to settle for that, I gave a brief nod, then turned down the hall toward the lockers to deposit my books before going to the cafeteria. Malik waited behind me, close enough to stroke my wings, but he did not. A strange sort of shiver went through me. Had something changed between us? Whatever us was? I pushed aside my growing worry and stepped past him, leading the way to the cafeteria. I stepped through the doors and went right to Logan's table. Even in jeans and a t-shirt, even with his light diminished, Malik looked radiant in this terrestrial world of temptations. His wings spread behind him, and I wondered how any human could look at him and mistake him for a mortal being. I settled into the table across from Logan and Didi. Hello, everyone, I said, smiling. I gestured to Malik, who stood behind me. This is Malik. He's new also. I told him he could sit with us. Is that all right? Logan and the boys looked at Malik. I couldn't read their expressions, but the sudden darkening of their auras gave me the impression it wasn't all right. Sophia spoke first. Sure. She scooted her chair over as if she expected Malik to drop onto the ground beside her. We're always open to new people. Didi sighed. What are we, the welcoming committee? She said it quietly and into her soda can, but I still heard it. I was certain Malik did too, but he just pulled over a chair and sank into it with a smile. Thanks. His smile dazzled, and I noticed how both girls studied him with more interest. Logan folded his arms on the table and lowered his chin, sending a glower Malik's direction. So, where did you move from? Malik unwrapped a baked good, and for the first time I noticed the strength of his arms, the muscles beneath the skin I'd never paid attention to in Arcadia. His arm bumped mine, and I held very still, not breathing, pretending not to notice. Georgia, he said, taking a bite of his food and meeting Logan's eyes. I also looked at Logan, scanning the vicinity around him, but there were no Temptare nearby. Logan's attitude was his alone. Logan frowned at him, and I shifted uneasily. Turning his eyes away from Malik, Logan focused on me. He smiled, but it felt forced. So you're grounded and can't do something this weekend, huh? You got grounded, Sophia said. You should have stuck with us, Dee Dee said, her tone smug. I was keeping Logan safe, I said. Malik choked on his food and Henry pounded him on the back. Don't mind her, he said. She says weird things like that. Malik shot me a look but said nothing. Yeah, I rely on Jessica here to keep me out of trouble, Logan said, and though his words held a note of teasing, his grin was genuine. She's my conscience. Well, you're in trouble this weekend then, Jacob chuckled. Why wouldn't I asked, my alarm growing. It's nothing, Logan said. Ignore him. Sophia and Dee Dee exchanged glances, but said nothing. I unwrapped my candy bar, but my nerves prickled with uneasiness. Logan was hiding something, and I could feel negative emotions rolling off Malik beside me. Resentment, annoyance, jealousy? He hadn't been on Earth long enough for all that. Are you ungrounded on Saturday? Logan asked. I think so, I said. Christine said 1 week. Great, we can catch a movie or something. Sorry, Malik said, interrupting Logan. We've got a family thing going on this Saturday. Christine volunteered Jessica to show me around town. Logan's eyes narrowed as he looked back and forth between us. You know each other already? I looked at Malik. Us knowing each other would make no sense. No, Malik answered, lying without hesitation. We just met. But, since she's new also, Mr. Stone thought it would be good for us to spend time together. I covered my mouth to hide my shock at how smoothly the falsehood fell from his lips. She doesn't know anything around here, Logan said, frustration bleeding out of the corners of his aura. Like the blind leading the blind, Henry smirked. Sorry, Malik said, not responding to the jibe. But she won't be available. Sunday, then, Logan said, and he didn't take his eyes from Malik, as if he were issuing a challenge. I can on Sunday, I said, not finding the chocolate of my candy bar appealing at the moment. Christine likes me home. It's a family day. The bell rang to indicate the end of lunch, and the others stood, pushing their chairs in while keeping their eyes on me, Malik, and Logan. Logan shrugged and stood also. He came around and slung an arm over my shoulders, his hands brushing my wings, and I shivered. That was the only touch I could feel, and he didn't know he'd done it. He gave me a side hug. We'll hang out when you're ungrounded, and I promise to keep you out of trouble this time. He slid his arm off and followed his friends out the door. Let's go outside, Malik said, his expression tight. I can't miss class, I said, trailing behind him. I got in big trouble for doing that last time. He closed his eyes and inhaled, then let it out. When he focused on me again, a semblance of calm had returned to his golden brown eyes. I'm not asking you to miss class. I just want to talk for a second. Lines rock, I asked. Outside. I didn't argue this time as we moved from the cafeteria to the outdoors. Malik stopped just outside the doors, not walking over to the benches in front of the school. He leaned his head against the brick wall and shut his eyes. Taking human form was a mistake, he breathed. I sensed him struggling with something, but I didn't understand it. He opened his eyes. When we take human form, we lose some of our celestial light. Many of the weaknesses we struggled with as mortals come back to haunt us. Because we've been exposed to greater light, it's a little easier to fight them, but I feel them now, trying to weigh me down and crush me. It was difficult to imagine Malik with weaknesses. What are you fighting? Anger. I could see that. I could see it simmering in his aura, wanting to manifest itself. I studied the reddish-orange color. He had told me before that anger was still an issue for him in Arcadia. You fought anger often as a mortal? No, I let it rule me. I looked up to see him watching me watch him, and the anger was rapidly diminishing. Wima? He shook his head. We can talk about that later. We have another problem, Jez. What is that? Logan. I nodded. Yes, I know. I won't be able to go with him on Friday and see what he's involved in. That's not it. I paused. There's another problem? Jez, he thinks you're his girlfriend. My jaw dropped. I hugged my arms around my body and forced a laugh. What? No, he doesn't. We're just friends. Malik snorted and rolled his eyes. Come on, I spent 18 years as a human boy. I know when a guy is laying claim to someone. Everything about his body language told me to stay away. My heart sank. I'd suspected Logan was attracted to me, but for him to think we were together? What do I do? You could make it clear you're not his. I nodded. I'll do that. The tardy bell rang, and I'd forgotten I needed to get to class. I didn't want to go. I wanted to be close to Malik, to feel those strong arms wrap around me. The yearning was worse because now I knew it was possible. But he maintained 2 feet of distance between us, his arms crossed over his chest, not trying to caress my wings. Is your anger directed at me? I asked, afraid of the answer but needing to know. His wings fluttered and he dropped his arms. No, but I want to punch Logan's lights out. I gave him a startled look. His lights out? I didn't know what that meant, but it didn't sound good. Why? Because he put his arm around you, because he thinks you belong to him. But he's your assignment, I said. You're supposed to protect him. I'm having a bit of a conflict of interest right now, Malik said. He reached out finally and stroked the edge of my wing, and then as if he couldn't help himself, he curled a strand of my hair around his finger and tucked it behind my ear. His fingers brushed the surface of my skin and my heart skipped a beat. I closed my eyes, feeling how his hand lingered on the ridge of my ear and then traced it down to my earlobe before pulling back. I lifted my eyes to find his expression conflicted. I've wanted to touch you for so long, he murmured. You can now, I said, leaning toward him. He shook his head and took a step back. Now, especially now, I can't. He turned around and opened the doors. We're both visible to students. You're late to class. I'll visit you tonight. He paused and glanced back at me. You'll tell Logan? Yes, I said. I'll clear it up. He nodded and disappeared inside. Chapter 28. I struggled to stay focused in my last 2 classes of the day. Malik was here, at De La Salle High School, and for the first time in my existence, I had been able to feel his touch without pain. Instead of satisfying me, it seemed to have awakened an unending appetite within me, and I wanted to feel it again, just the touch of his hand on my ear. I could not imagine anything more intimate than that gesture. Then there was Logan. I couldn't forget him, though he had fallen on my mental list of priorities. I set my mind to my next task, which was finding him after school and making sure he knew I was just a friend. Of course it wouldn't be easy. I knew where Logan and his friends hung out after school, but Logan wasn't there when I found them by the benches. Only the girls and Henry. Do you know where Logan is? I asked. They looked at Henry, who shrugged. Pretty sure he's with Jacob? Not sure where they went, though. Want me to call him? Dee Dee asked, pulling out her phone. It was right, I'll find him. I had the feeling I just needed to look for the shadows. Anywhere there was a dark corner or a secluded area at the school, the Temptare thrived. Human children entered these areas to conduct unsavory business, and I was thus not surprised to discover Alexander and his crew gathered around each other in an alley behind the school, so twisted around Temptare that I couldn't tell where the Temptare ended and their own dark auras began. I did not want to find Logan here in this mess. But there he was. He and Jacob stood on the outskirts, but the Temptara still crawled over them, urging them forward, pushing them toward the group. Alexander held something out to Logan, and the Temptara rushed in, breathing into his ear and into his mind. I clenched my fists, wishing for a dagger so I could dispatch these demons to Sheol. Logan, I called, distracting him right as he reached to take the object from Alex. He swiveled, the Temptare clutching at him as he whirled away from them. Jessica, he said, alarm in his voice. What are you doing here? Alexander and company seemed to be wondering the same thing, shoving things into their pockets and backing away while the Temptare hissed at me for interrupting. I kept my eyes focused on Logan, trying not to show my fear. I was looking for you. My voice came out high and uncertain. I wanted away from here. What if they sensed who I was? What if they somehow sucked me back into that life? Logan murmured something to Alexander, and then he stepped away from the group. He wrapped his hand around my arm and tugged me around the corner. What's up? He asked, dropping my arm when we were out of sight. His tone was false casualness, something I could pick up on after just a few weeks of living with mortals. I didn't need to see his aura. Nothing. I went looking for you with your friends, and you weren't there. I eyed the area behind him, where the Temptare crept out to hover. still breathing their poison into his mind. "Great, you found me. I'm just talking with Jacob and Alexander. I'll see you tomorrow." If I said bye to him now, he would go right back over to that group and finish whatever they were doing. "Can you walk me to my car?" He hesitated a moment, then he shrugged and said, "Sure." As he spoke, one tempter lost interest and whipped around, returning to the darkened alley. Only a stubborn one remained, hanging loosely from his shoulders, wraith-like fingers poking at his hair, sniffing his ears. I forced my eyes away. We walked in silence toward the pickup area where the other mobs of students waited, and I wondered how I was supposed to tell him we weren't together. "Logan," I began, just as he said, "So what's with the new guy?" I stopped walking and looked at him, and he laughed. "Go on," he said. "What were you saying?" "Well, about that," I hedged. Logan looked at me, his eyes zeroing in on me with laser intensity. How could a human do that? "About what?" "About the new guy." The temptar around his shoulders lifted its head and inhaled, and another popped out of the ground, wrapping itself around his leg. Heaven's throne, I needed to get rid of them. "He seems to need a friend," I fumbled, my mind not formulating my thoughts very clearly. "He needs a friend," Logan repeated. "You figured this out from one day of knowing him?" I shrugged, biting my lip and trying to hide my anxiety. "He was pretty adamant about meeting you guys." "It was definitely forceful," Logan said. Some of the aggression went out of his face. "That's all? You're just being friendly." He sounded cautious, but the tempter around his leg uncoiled itself and slithered back to the ground. "Yes, he's just a friend, like you are." "Like me? Because I'm just a friend?" There was no mistaking his displeasure, because the temptar was back, curling around like a snake, and another came zipping out of the alley, adding itself to the one around his shoulders. Anger and rejection spiked from his aura, responding to whatever emotions the temptar were feeding him. Right. I'll just go back to my other friends now. I had said the wrong thing, and I was losing Logan. "We're not friends like that." I grabbed his arm, wrapping my fingers around his wrist, desperation pulsing in my throat. "I mean, we're friends, but it's different." I was rambling because I had no idea what to say. I turned his hand over and pressed my fingers into his palm. The gesture made my heart ache because I had imagined touching Malik in such a way over and over in my head. It had the exact effect I hoped it would. All but one temptare peeled off him as a sudden brilliance shot out of Logan's aura, and the remaining demon backed off, repulsed by whatever Logan was feeling now. He squeezed my hand back and put his arm around my shoulders again, leaning his head against mine. "I kinda hope we're more than just friends." What could I say? The temptar lingered just out of sight, eager to dig their claws into Logan again. Yeah, I said, my heart sinking. I had pretty much done the opposite of what Malik asked. "Sini." I was quiet on the drive home, and though Christine probed, I didn't explain. Eventually, she quit asking me, and I let her assume it was just moody teenager stuff. Maybe it was. I felt more and more human every day, but ill-equipped to deal with these emotions I hadn't grown up with. I spent the evening in my room, doing my homework and reading, and then practicing my handwriting. I came down for dinner and then returned to the seclusion of my thoughts. My mind wandered while I did my handwriting practice. I couldn't tell Logan we weren't together because of the temptare. What would Malik say? My stream of consciousness flooded out across the pages of my notebook. As if summoned by my thoughts, Malik appeared behind me, slipping through the window. I turned around at my desk, then jumped from my chair and ran to him. "Malik!" I nearly threw my arms around him before I caught myself, stopping from doing what I had literally wanted to do for months. "Hey," Malik said, and the smile he gave me warmed my insides. He held his hands out, palms outward, and I held mine in front of his, almost touching but not, our auras mingling as they always had, and then I pushed the boundaries because I couldn't resist. I closed the gap between us and pressed my fingers against his fingers, flesh against flesh. The result was immediate and shocking. A radiant heat coursed through me, not burning or painful, but more pleasant than any feeling I'd had before. My chest felt like it was turning into hot liquid, and I closed my fingers around his, tightening my grip as the warm liquid spread from my chest to my stomach. I expected Malik to pull away from me, but instead his fingers closed around my hand as well, and we stayed that way for an eternity, our hands interlocked, something brilliant and pure passing between us. I wanted more. I pulled on his hands, trying to tug him closer, but that was when Malik let go. He slid free of my grip. One hand came up and stroked my face, fingers running from my jaw to my chin before he took a step backward and sank onto my bed. I moved toward the bed, wanting to be closer, but he held a hand up to stop me and shook his head. It's enough. I furrowed my brow at him, frustration spilling into my soul. How could that be enough for him when I wasn't satisfied? I just want to be close to you. I just want a little more. I know, he said, and he suddenly looked tired. But he didn't agree with me. He didn't express his own desire for more. I sank down on the beanbag and pressed my lips together. Malik looked at me and laughed. You're cute when you pout. I'm not pouting. Pouting was something young children did when they didn't get their way. We, the temptere, I meant, couldn't touch them, the young ones, because the light of heaven radiated too brightly around them still. Children managed to come up with their crazy antics all on their own. Malik's smile only grew wider, and I realized he thought the definition still applied. Well, when won't you let me touch you? I asked, trying to sound calm and reasonable. This is what we've been waiting for. His smile dissolved, an expression forming on his face that I couldn't read. It's what you've been waiting for. I was happy the way things were. His words stung, and I tried to shake off the hurt. You liked it the way it was, when all we could do was hold our hands up next to each other. I never felt closer to anyone than I did to you. Our souls could touch, even if our bodies couldn't. It wasn't enough for me, I shook my head. I've never touched anyone in my entire existence without excruciating pain. I see other angels touching, receiving pleasure and strength and comfort from each other. Why shouldn't I have that too? Because there's danger also, Jez, and that's something you're not aware of. The anger was back, muted this time, swirling into his aura. Just as quickly, he seemed to get control of it, and it vanished. What danger? I asked, but my eyes were on his aura, and I was more intrigued by his battle with his temper. I shifted my gaze from his aura to his eyes. Is it hard for you, fighting the anger? Malik hesitated a moment, and then he said, I wasn't my best self in mortality. Nobody is, I said. That's why mortals get another chance. After they die. Yeah, but I was one of those who didn't try. He said it in a flat tone, and I realized he was ashamed to admit that to me. To me, of all people. Malik, you can't think there's anything you might have done that could be worse than what I did. I said my words softly, not wanting to remind him of who I had been and what I had done, but if he thought he should feel guilty, I had so much more reason. It's different though, Jez. You didn't have any choice. You didn't know. Again, the angry color spiked in his aura. Why are you angry? I didn't want to debate the issue of our past lives with him. My father started drinking when I was a kid, and it turned him mean. And I dealt with it by becoming angry. I thought I had an excuse for the anger, so I didn't try to control it. I would lash out at people, my mom, my friends, my teachers, at... He stopped. His wings fluttered, and I knew there was more he wasn't saying, but I didn't press him. When I got to Arcadia, learning how to control my temper was one of the hardest things I had to do. It's a lot harder to change in spiritual form than physical, but I knew better once I received the greater light. I didn't want to be that person. I don't want to be him now. I swallowed against a tightness in my throat and an uncanny desire to cry. All that stemmed from your father? Because of his drinking? In his anger, I guess, he was my example, but I can't blame him. I still had the choice. I still had a mother who tried to teach me. I nodded, because what was I supposed to say? The guilt racked me, and I couldn't meet his eyes, so distraught was I by my own role in his mortal distress. I'm different now, Jez, he said, his tone earnest, as if he felt he needed to persuade me. I've worked hard to get my anger under control, but it's harder here. It really is. I feel almost human again. I need the light to help me. Malik, I don't care what you're battling, I said, meeting his eyes. You have fared much better in your battles than I have in mine. Knowing you is an honor. For a moment, his aura flared so brightly I squinted my eyes against the light. Thank you, Jez, he said, some of the sadness fading from him. I latched on to his change in mood, desperate to get away from this subject before I gave away something I would regret. My conscience screamed at me to come clean, but I knew Elder Master Barakiel was right. This wasn't the time. Tell me about the academy, I said, leaning forward on my beanbag. I'm so glad you're back. I stopped just short of admitting I had missed him. In light of the distance he seemed to want to maintain between us, perhaps it was best I didn't say it. Look, Malik reached into his bag and pulled out a shiny black feather. He held it out to me, and I took it, turning it over in my hands. What is this? I asked. Your feather. I looked up at him in confusion. I don't understand. The one you sent me from Arcadia. My eyes widened. It worked. He nodded. I don't know how, but whatever you're creating is more than a window. We should tell someone, I said, almost reluctantly. We should, he gave a half grin, then leaned back, his expression going serious. But that's not what's on your mind. Time to fess up. I pleated my fingers together. I'm worried about Logan. Without your light, he seems to be slipping. Logan's making his own choices, for better or worse. My GM's been keeping an eye on him also. But you've gotten too involved. Did you explain things to him? I tried. When Malik frowned at me, I wrung my hands together and hurried to explain. He's always surrounded by Temptare. I managed to get him away from them so I could tell him, but then his mood changed when I started to, and the Temptare were returning, and I thought I was making things worse, so I didn't do it. So he still thinks you're his girlfriend? An incredulous note entered Malik's voice. You know you can't be. You have to tell him. I did. Not in so many words, but I did. I told him we're friends. I slid my fingers apart, trying to remember the exact words I'd used. That we're just friends. That's what I said. But you didn't stop him from believing it might be more than that. I gave a helpless shrug. Malik, I've spent this time you've been gone creating a relationship with him. He didn't have you, so I took your spot, being his guardian. I couldn't undo that. But you're not his guardian, and you might be making things worse. What is he going to do when you disappear? I shrugged. It's no worse than somebody dying. You don't know anything. It is worse. When someone vanishes from your life, you wonder about them. You think about them. There's always the what-ifs. At least when someone dies, there's closure. I licked my lips, thinking, then we'll just have to fake my death. Malik groaned and put his face in his hands. We never should have left you here alone. I've been helping, I said, wounded. At least I can see the Temptare. They always hide when you come around. Malik lifted his face from his hands. Are they the same ones every time? It's hard to say. They're still in wraith form, but I think so. There's 3 or 4 of them that like to hang around him. One in particular that doesn't ever leave his side. We might be able to use that to our advantage, that you can see them and they don't know what you are. I nodded, careful not to blurt out my fear that they would discover what I had been. Okay, here's what we'll do. You keep being Logan's friend. His lower lip twisted at the word. I'll be your friend, and I'll get to Logan through you. Don't let him get too close to you. Maintain distance, or it could cause problems. I will. I guess that's it for now. Malik stood up and stretched his wings, which spanned from one end of my bed to the other. Are you going? I can't stay here. He glanced over his shoulder at my bed. But you have before. Even I heard the whine in my voice. It's different now, Jez. So something was different. What, though? I nodded, swallowing back my petulant desire for answers. No wonder he'd compared me to a child throwing a tantrum. Where are you staying? Do you have a family like I do? He shook his head. No. When I'm not in school, I return to my angel form and keep an eye on Logan, as I always have. And I have others to minister to. I'm multi-teching. I tried to smile, but I hated that he was leaving me when he didn't have to. I'll see you at school tomorrow then? Yes. Malik didn't say another word, just moved to the window and stepped out of it, as silently as a ghost. I turned out my light and lay down in the bed, wrapping my wings around me like a soft blanket. It's all right, I told myself. Things will go back to normal. If I even knew what normal meant. Chapter 29. The next few days developed into a steady, almost comfortable routine. Logan seemed brighter every day, and I did my best to occupy him at school so he didn't have time to hang around Alexander. I had second hour with Malik, though being so near him and being unable to touch him was almost worse than him being away in Arcadia. Almost, but not quite. Still, every day in class I'd glance over at Malik at the same time he happened to look at me, and he'd give me his secret smile that melted my insides. I had the quiet comfort of knowing, in spite of appearances, that he and I were together. At least that was how I felt until I came upon him and Shasta in the locker hall before fourth hour. I stopped dead in my tracks at the sight of his white wings fluttering behind him as she laughed and touched his shoulder, one hip thrust out with her books on it. Her posse wasn't around her, but she didn't seem to need them. Jealous rage blazed through me. Heat flickered up from my navel and crackled through my body. A dozen Temptar in the hall lifted their heads and honed in on me. I didn't care. I stalked toward the two of them. Shasta didn't notice me until I inserted myself beside Malik, close enough that my shoulder bumped his. He startled and shifted a half a step away. Jessica, he said, and was I imagining a guilty note in his voice? The Temptar skulking around my feet hissed at him and shied away, but they didn't take my anger with them. "Excuse me," Shasta said, narrowing her crystal blue eyes at me. "Private conversation here." Her locker door slammed shut. She turned toward it, surprise written on her features, and I said, "Conversation over." She whipped back toward me, recognizing the challenge in my words. She looked from me to Malik and arched an eyebrow. "Is there some reason why Miss Freak here thinks we shouldn't be talking? Does she have some kind of claim on you?" "Ooh, Jessica." He shot me a quick glance, and I read a brief warning in his eyes. "We just met. We're friends." She smiled, tossing her long hair and shaking her shoulders so her sleeves slipped just enough to expose more skin. "Might want to make sure she knows that." I inhaled sharply, and a bizarre breeze blew through the hall, slamming every locker before throwing the school doors open and howling into the outside air. "It was nice to meet you," Malik said. "We'll talk later." His fingers trailed along my wingtips, and he found a feather and tugged. Hard. "Ow," I breathed out, but he didn't answer. He was already walking toward the open exit doors. I was meant to follow. I started after him, but Shasta stepped in front of me first. The Temptar came with her, latching onto Shasta and filling her head with malice. And mine. I didn't turn to the shadowy figure as it crawled around my shoulders, afraid it would detect my true nature if I made eye contact. "Listen, freakazoid," she said. "He's not into you. Do yourself a favor and back off." She reached up and patted my cheek with a simpering smile, and I resisted the urge to bite her fingers. Her gaze traveled from my face to my shoes and back again. I doubt he would date a target. He certainly wouldn't sleep with one. She stepped around me, and I said, as calmly as I could in a clear, loud voice, "I hope you warn all your partners that you have herpes." The hall fell into a deathly silence, and then a slow murmur rose up again, but this time, news of Shasta's would-be diagnosis filled every sentence. Her face had gone white when she turned to face me. "I do not," she breathed. I knew that, and I felt utter shame for spreading such a lie. The Temptare still hunched around me, growing heavier, feeding off my weakness. It fed me more witty comebacks, more opportunities to slam Shasta into the dirt in front of her peers. But I knew better, and I was ashamed. So I did the only thing I could do. I ran from the hall. Malik was still outside when I burst out. The Temptare took flight when I neared him, but I knew it wasn't gone. "What did you do?" he demanded, and I looked behind me at the chaos in my wake. "I'm sorry," was all I could say, and then I remembered why I'd become so angry in the first place. "But you... What could I say, Jez?" he said, interrupting me. "She wouldn't understand anything you and I have, especially when we have to spend our time here pretending to hardly know each other." "Yes, but after you made me tell Logan that we're only friends..." I didn't lead Shasta on. It's the first time I've ever talked to her. "But you liked the way she touched you." "Hey, no," he protested, too weakly in my opinion, and my temper flared. "Don't you know who she is? She's my nemesis." "Jez." He hesitated a split second, and then he put his hands on my forearms, right below my shoulders, his fingers closing around my skin. I froze. I stopped talking. I didn't breathe, didn't move, afraid he'd take his hands off me. He seemed to have forgotten whatever he was going to say also. Instead, he ran his hands down my forearms, stopping at the elbows. He didn't look at me, but stared at his hands as if they'd grown a mind of their own. My heart raced in my chest, my body prickling as an electric energy shot through me. He tightened his grip on my elbows and pulled me ever so slightly closer to him. Then he stopped and released me, letting me go and splaying his fingers as if touching me had burned him. He took a step back, increasing the distance between us. He shook his head, paused, and said, "You're letting your emotions get away with you. Learn from me, Jez. You don't want to let anger do the deciding for you." If it would make him touch me again, the ways of my yoga class opened up. If it would bring him closer, ... Maybe I did. He stopped me from finishing, pressing a finger to my lips. "Don't say it, Jez. You don't. That emotion is beneath you. She's a girl, just a stupid human girl. What would you do if you were called on assignment right now to protect her?" His words gave me pause. I had to sit back and consider that, and, with a sinking heart, I knew my jealous emotions conflicted with my heavenly responsibility. I had to overcome them. Just don't be so friendly with her," I said, and then my face flushed, because asking that of him, expecting that of him, gave an indication that I thought I had the right to do so. "I'm an angel," he grinned at me. "It's my job to be friendly." I tried to smile back, but I couldn't. My heart was troubled. I'd become a quick target for the temptare. I was better than that. "I have to get to class," I said. "I'm late for 4th hour." "Jez," he said, calling me back as I turned to go. You're the only one, right? You know what I feel for you?" I hesitated and then gave a brief nod. "I think so." I waited for him to say something else, but he didn't, so I slipped into the building. My grounding finally lifted. I felt foolish for hoping it, but I half expected Malik to come around on Saturday and take me out to do something like he told Logan he was. But apparently that was a lie for Logan's sake, so I stayed at home with nothing to do, even though I was no longer grounded. Where was Malik, and what was he doing? The phone rang around dinner time. Christine answered it. "Hello?" "Yes, she is." She met my eyes across the room and gave me a small smile. "Just a moment. May I ask who's calling?" I waited for her to hand me the phone, knowing who it was. There was nobody else who called me. Christine handed it over and whispered loudly, "It's Logan." I took the phone and popped into a window seat in the sitting room, crossing my legs over the edge and staring outside. "Hello?" "Hi, Jessica. Glad Christine's still letting me talk to you. Never grounded anymore." "I know. I thought you were going somewhere with the new kid today." "Me too," I said. But he never contacted me. I felt a little guilty for letting my feelings out in my words. Malik and I were not having a mortal experience together so we could date properly. What existed between us was so much bigger than dating, so much more profound, that it made the earthly custom feel trite and meaningless. So why did I wish he were the one on the phone with me, the one asking me to go somewhere? "Well, I guess that means you're still available. I can pick you up in an hour, take you to dinner, maybe, see a movie?" "Let me ask Christine." Christine was fine with it on one condition. She wanted Logan to come over and chat with her first. He agreed. I sat at the kitchen table with a book open in front of me, though I didn't read it. Instead, my eyes focused on the view outside the window, watching for an unfamiliar vehicle to pull up. "So what are your feelings for Logan?" Christine asked me, interrupting my vigilance. I focused my attention on her. "I think he and I are getting to be good friends." "Friends?" Christine smirked. "Only friends," I said. "I think he would like to be more than that, but that's all we can be." "Does he know your feelings?" "We have not discussed them in great detail," I hedged. "For now, I would like to just enjoy his friendship and company. Plus, I believe I am a good influence on him." "Well, I believe that," Christine said. "There's something about you. It makes people want to be around you, makes people want to be better when they're around you. You have an inner light." "I do?" I couldn't help the hope that sprang up in my chest. Was it possible? Did I have more light than the mortals around me? Could they sense it? You do. You also have a maturity as if you were 1,000 years old instead of 16. My face warmed at the accuracy of her statement. Of course she didn't know. But the truth was, I had a millennia of experiences, mostly what I'd witnessed from people who I had led astray. Which reminded me that I was here because I wanted to redeem myself. I wanted to do good for humanity and somehow begin the impossible task of correcting my wrongs. A little white car purred to a stop in the driveway. Logan stepped out, shoving his blonde hair back with one hand. A hazy shadow lingered behind him, so transparent I barely saw it. A tempter. He couldn't seem to rid himself of that one, though the others were keeping their distance. He jogged up the steps, dressed in dark jeans, a blue t-shirt, and a black denim jacket. Christina and I both watched him without saying a word. He rang the bell and I jumped up. "I'll get it," Christine said, rising also. I stayed in place while she went to the door and pulled it open. "Hello, Logan," she said, inviting him in with a bob of her head. "Hi," Logan said, a flicker of nervousness coloring his aura. He stepped into the house, and the tempter came with him, disappearing into his shirt. So they could still enter this house. Even though Christine and Matt did what they could to keep the home holy and clean, temptations could still happen. "It's all right," I said, trying to reassure him. Christine shot me a bemused look and then faced him again. "I'm fine with you taking Jessica out. But she just finished getting ungrounded from the last time she went out with you." Logan winced. "Sorry about that. I just want to make sure it doesn't happen again. Jessica has a curfew. I want her back here by 10. I glanced over my shoulder at the clock. It was just after 6. That gave us more than enough time to get food. "Yes, ma'am." Christine smiled sweetly. "I assume I don't need to have the birds and the bees talk with you or mention how much trouble you'd be in for taking advantage of an impressionable young girl in the foster care system?" Logan's face colored bright red. His eyes flickered toward me, and I had the insane urge to giggle at the thought of me being impressionable, but I kept my expression straight. "Oh, ma'am, I got it." "More thing." Christine fished a cell phone from her purse and placed it in my hand. "That's my phone. I'll be home all evening. If you need something, call the landline." "I will," I nodded. "Is that everything?" Logan asked, practically holding his breath. "Yes. See you in a few hours." We didn't say a word as we walked outside and went down the steps. I clasped my hands together, and Logan hurried to open my door to the car before I got there. "That wasn't so bad, right?" I said. "Could have been worse," he said. He looked over his shoulder as he backed onto the road, chewing on his lower lip. Not much worse." "He's letting me go." "What happened to Malik?" He glanced at me once before facing forward and driving toward Canal Street. I shrugged. "I don't know. I just never heard from him." "Sure you didn't already know him. He seemed possessive of you." "Not possessive enough. He should have been here tonight. He worries about me. He knows what kind of life I came from." "What kind of life was that?" "Fire, brimstone, demons, and debauchery." I considered what I could say, and Logan answered himself. "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that." "It's all right, I just can't talk about it." "Is that bad?" "It was hell," I said. My answer did not satisfy his curiosity. If anything, his eyes only glowed with the desire to find out more. "Hang on 1 second," he said, parking the car in a familiar alley. "I need to take care of something." I knew where we were, and my concern ratcheted up 10 levels. "Why are we here? Are you meeting Alexander?" My gaze flickered over him, around him, but I didn't see any temptare, other than the hazy one hanging out in the back seat, hoping for a handout. "Just chill, okay? This isn't about you." While not downright rude, his tone was abrasive. I stayed quiet while he got out of the car, but as soon as he disappeared into the corner bar, I hopped out. I wasn't going to sit in silence and wait.